Here's what you missed on February 21st, 2019. We went through lesson 3, character and conflict. So in your historical fiction novels, we looked at how your character deals with external conflict and internal conflict, and how does that help us understand the character more and what's going on in the story. How do they respond to that trouble, that conflict? So remember, this recalibration, remember, what are we even doing? We're reading with guiding questions in mind. You have those 4 guiding questions in your reader's notebook. You're taking notes while you read. Things you might take notes on are, how is your character changing? What are the major conflicts? What are the key events that might be happening? People, places, things, and questions. Writing down questions while you're reading, whether they're things that are happening in the real historical event or just things that will help you understand the novel better. If they're things that are happening in real context, then you want to research to understand more. You also have an exit slip to go get. Get that off of the handouts and links page so that you have that. And then you want to fill out the top of it, including the definitions. And what I'm talking about is, look over here. The top of your exit ticket says external conflict and internal conflict. You should know what those are off the top of your head by now. If you do not, go back to your composition book and look at your notes under literary elements, under character. If you don't have those notes, then you need to add those. External conflict is a conflict that happens from an outside source. So things like the war, being shot at, because we're talking about Vietnam War as our example. Internal conflicts are things that happen inside the head of the character. So it's an internal struggle about decision making and what to do. External, outside conflict, internal, inside conflict. Back to this. So we're looking back at what kind of person is the protagonist and what's going on in the story. Those were our first 2 guiding questions. Using patrol, I'm going to read a little bit more. We read a certain amount of it. And in that first part, if you missed that, go back to lesson 1. And in this book, we saw this young U.S. soldier who's in Vietnam, in the jungle, being shot at, shooting at the enemy, talking about the enemy, and we looked at little things that describe what this person is like. Like, for example, we brought up that he notices the beauty of the land, even though he's in the middle of a war. He says that he's scared. He's trembling at one point, and he hopes his enemy is trembling more. But then he brings up things like, I wonder if my enemy is leaning against a tree that is as old as his grandfather. So there's this bit of, I know that the enemy is also someone like me. And he brings up, I am the enemy, several times. And so you know that he is someone else's enemy. Like, he has an awareness of that. So we also saw that although he says he's afraid, he also seems to know exactly what he's doing. He seems very trained. He's also the one that called in the bombs. So the fact that he did the calling makes us think that maybe he's experienced, maybe he's been there longer than some of the other people. But at the same time, there was a part where he shot into the shadows, and he just kept shooting because he said, in war, even shadows are the enemy. And so we talked about, like, does that mean that he's so scared that he's just shooting and shooting, or is it that he's experienced and he knows that is a real danger? If you can't see what's there, it might really be a danger. So anyway, we had all of those things, and so now we're going to read further, and we're going to see, how does he handle trouble? How does he handle conflict? And we're going to look at the external conflict and the internal conflict. So we left off with, my body shakes. I tell myself that I will not die on this bright day. Against the horizon, columns of blue-gray smoke rise. 2 clicks away, there are flashes of gunfire. 2 clicks is the distance of my enemy. My chest tightens. I wipe my sweaty palms. I bite back my tears. We move again. We are always moving. My legs ache. My shoulders sag. My 1,000 eyes look for death in the waving bamboo fields. A village. It's our target. We circle it. We swing around, sweeping our gun sights along the windows in the huts. We rush in behind the hollow booming of grenades. So we stopped here for a second to just say, a village. A village is where just regular people live. These are civilians that live in a village, but it's also their target. So is the enemy hiding there? What's going on in that village? There are also grenades going off, so it's dangerous. But it also lets us know there's civilians there, as he talks about now. Secure the village, a sergeant calls. He points toward the enemy. The enemy. A brown woman with rivers of age etched deeply into her face. An old man, his eyes heavy with memory. And babies. Babies. Little enemies crying on the mud roads. Little enemies with tears running down dusty cheeks. But I know there are other enemies. They are strong and young. I am strong and young. So again, he sees everyone as an enemy, and here he's talking about the elderly and babies, and he's in this situation where he's a person, but he's also a soldier, and there's that conflict. So in this one, because it's written in verse, basically, and there's not a lot of explanation, you have to infer a lot, but the fact that he mentions it, and mentions and what we know about him already, makes me think he's conflicted internally. The others, they are the real enemy. They have dogs that bark at danger, and wooden bowls that hold a day's rice, and grandmothers who stand sullen at their huts. This is my enemy. And that was confusing at first, because I was like, well, he's only talking about people that have dogs and that are eating rice. Like, it's still talking about civilians. But then I go, no. He's talking about the strong and the young that are on the other side. They have dogs that bark at danger. They have food. They're ready. They're ready and they're prepared. And also they have grandmothers who stand sullen at their huts. They're also people. And he connects to the fact that they are there too. This is my enemy. It's very confusing. I feel like I infer that he's confused by that. They're ready, but they also are people. The pickup zone is just beyond a rice paddy. In the paddy, a farmer squats, waiting for the squad to pass. His stick-thin legs disappear into the shallow water, and it looks as if it is he who grows there. He is the harvest that we must understand. We could talk about that for a long time, but we're not going to. A shot. I reach for the ground and scramble for cover. The elephant grass cuts my arms, and as I slide toward a low wall. Then there's an opening in the tall grass, and I look through. There is the enemy. He is looking at me. We are surprised to see each other, shocked. How young he is. We stare across the distance. I know he wants me to lift my rifle, to be the enemy. I want him to lift his rifle. I want him to turn away. In a heartbeat, we have learned too much about each other. So here, when we first started reading, we said, what would he do if he came face to face with the enemy? And now here he is face to face. So this is the trouble. This is the conflict. This is the external conflict. The whole war is an external conflict, but right here in this moment, knowing what we know about him, what is he going to do? Here he comes face to face with another soldier. And he says, I know he wants me to lift my rifle to be the enemy. Like, he wants me to shoot first. One of us has to shoot first, and we're supposed to shoot at each other, and we're soldiers. I want him to lift his rifle. It'd be much easier if he did it first. I want him to run away. It'd be easier if he ran away instead of me, and in a heartbeat, we've learned too much about each other. And because the other guy's not doing anything either, they're just staring at each other, they must both be thinking something similar. So what does he do? Whoop. I keep touching the button on my thing. The putt-putt of the chopper interrupts the moment. The enemy turns away and is swallowed by the lush grass that is everywhere in this land. I lift my rifle. I aim at the distant shadow. I am the enemy. I lower the rifle. So here we get to see, just in these 4 lines too, how he reacts to that. How does he respond to this conflict, this external conflict? So the enemy runs away. And as he's running away, I lift my rifle. I aim at the distant shadow. So he knows he's supposed to shoot him. And he can. He's close enough. I aim at the distant shadow. And we know that before, when he saw shadows and didn't even know what was there, he shot and shot and shot and said, I can't not shoot. Because, in war, shadows are the enemy too. And here he's aiming at the guy running away. I am the enemy. I lower the rifle. And so this shows his internal conflict coming into it. He could shoot that soldier in the back. He could shoot him as he runs away. The other guy's just running. He's right there. But then he realizes, I am the enemy, and doesn't want to be the enemy. And he lowers his rifle. That tells us a lot about him. And it's got the external conflict of what happened and how he responded to it that lets us know. And also his internal conflict. Now, this one's written in first person, so we know that he thinks this, but you might be reading a third person, but you're still going to be able to know, is this character worried about his father? Is he, are they hiding and think they're going to be found? Like, you know what they're thinking, even if it's in third person. A lot of times you can infer that. All right, my fingers clutch the webbing of the chopper. It's strange with the weight of the squad. Well, we just finished the book, and there's a little bit more that you can read into it, but it basically just ends with, I write a letter to someone I love, and I wonder if my enemy is writing a letter. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of this war. And in this line, I can then start inferring things about what I know when I was doing my research in lesson 2. About Vietnam, that maybe he was drafted, maybe he doesn't belong there, maybe he doesn't want to be part of this at all. And so that also tells me that the conflict that he's in, it's almost like the conflict is punishing him for being who he is. And I know from real life that a lot of vets came back having to turn into someone or something they didn't want to be, at least for the time that they were there. And that changed them. And so I can, bring that into this story. Okay, so now you go to your exit slip. You want to find a time in your novel when the protagonist encounters trouble, external conflict. So again, it does not have to be the major conflict. It doesn't even have to be a major conflict. But make sure it is your protagonist's conflict. Because there will also be a lot of conflict talked about in some of these stories where they talk about what's going on and it's a huge conflict. You want a conflict that happened to your character. So in your groups, you got together and decided which conflict are we going to talk about? And you pick that trouble, that conflict. And then write one sentence to describe it. And I shouldn't use the word conflict and not trouble now that I'm looking at that. Then your second question on there is, how does the protagonist respond to this trouble? What does he or she do? So you want to say, just like he picked up his rifle, he aimed at the shadows, he lowered the rifle. Those are things that he did. The third question, what does this reveal about your protagonist? What kind of person is he? Let me go to this one. And then when we look at part 2 of the exit slip, it's again, summarize the way the protagonist feels about the trouble, which is leading to what character traits does your character have that collide with what's going on in the story? It doesn't seem to match the trouble. And then could the setting and conflict cause the character to change? What will be the positive or negative? And so this whole side is more about the internal conflicts that are going on with your character. Does this character, the things that I am the enemy and I don't want to be the enemy? Those are some of the things that it's the internal struggles that really let us know, is this true to the character's nature or not? And so you'll fill out the second side of the exit slip. Today, we had a fire drill, we had all kinds of things. So we got through, some classes got through part 1, nobody got through part 2, so we're going to come back to it tomorrow. That's what you missed. Let me see if there's anything else you need to do. Oh, just plan how much reading, take notes in your reader's notebook. So make sure you're reading about 30 minutes a night and be prepared to share your insights tomorrow.